and welcome back to Curiosity Uncovered. My name is Madison, and today I'm going to be talking a lot about manatees and their migration and everything about that. We're going to do a deep dive onto what they do and how they act. So we're really going to be looking at what makes a manatee so special, what migration is, and what a manatee's migration might look like, because they're a little more complex than meets the eye. So when I first think of manatees, I usually think of giant, gentle creatures that float along rivers. We have a really good picture here of just one chilling and hanging out. But manatees are more than what meets the eye, right? They aren't just giant sea cows, which is what they have as a nickname. When we first really make observations about manatees, a lot of people's first reaction is they have a lot of fat because they look really big and kind of awkward and a little chunky, right? Well, they do have a lot of fat, but that's not what allows them to sink and float in the water as well. One of the most interesting adaptations that manatees do have is their really heavy bones. Right? So here's a really good skeletal picture of our manatees, and you can see their ribs. Most importantly, manatees' ribs can weigh up to 2 pounds, which is pretty heavy when you think about it, right? So if you were to hold a manatee rib, it feels like you're almost holding a little dumbbell that you could do curls with. It's pretty impressive. So this is really responsible for their ability to have buoyancy in water, right? Manatees are marine mammals. They aren't fish. So like fish have swim bladders to help with their buoyancies, manatees don't have that. Like all other mammals, they have to breathe air, they have hair, they give live birth, and all those fun things, right? But to be able to move up and down in the water column, they have that heavy bone adaptation. On average, an adult manatee can weigh 1,000 pounds, but it has been recorded they can weigh up to 3,000 pounds when they're in the right habitat and the right conditions as well. This also really depends on their diet and their availability of their diet. Manatees are herbivores, which really means they eat only plants. Specifically, they're going to eat seagrass, and they're going to only eat aquatic plants, right? They're not going to eat meat or any bugs or anything like that. They're just going to be munching along on seagrass. So manatees can really be found grazing for up to 6 to 8 hours of the day. It's like a full-time job for them, right? They can consume between 4 to 9% of their body weight in a single day. That's why manatees kind of look so chunky and big. So to be able to graze almost all day, right, manatees have also these specially adapted tails. They kind of look almost like a paddle. Like think if you were going kayaking or going on a paddle board, you have a tail fin almost paddle. Well, manatees overall have adapted to have this tail to allow them to move up and down and really propel them forward. Manatees don't go super fast, but they are able to kind of move throughout the water column that way. Their front flippers, right, are mainly used for steering and manipulating objects. Manatees are almost kind of like a giant boat in a way. Instead of having a propel, they have a tail. Instead of having like a steering wheel, they have their front flippers. But they're able to kind of manipulate their objects, right, that they're messing with. Like a lot of mom manatees like to manipulate their little baby manatees by turning them around and going and guiding them where they need to go, right? But the bones on their front flippers almost look like hands, right? In the picture earlier, if you took a minute to observe it, right, they have almost hand-like bones. This kind of allows them to have more flexibility and to be able to move along as well. Their modified fins and tails allow them really to migrate through different waters easily, right? So now that we've kind of learned a little bit about what manatees are and what makes them so special, we're going to talk a little bit about the migration process. So to do that, we kind of need to define migration. So migration is the process in which certain species move really from one area to another for a certain amount of time. And they may migrate to find warmer weather, to find more food, better living conditions, or mate. And maybe just a vast of little other reasons as well. Manatees migrate for a very specific reason, right? They migrate to find certain warmer waters. And it's a seasonal movement that happens for manatees to find this warmer water. Even in areas around here, our manatees will start to find warmer waters, right? Even near the science center, all the waters and things like that, it gets a little cold. It gets below freezing sometimes. So our manatees can't survive that because even though they are considered a marine mammal, they don't contain blubber, right? Blubber is something that helps keep a lot of deep sea marine mammals warm and insulated as well. Manatees in general can thrive in both salt fresh and brackish water. So if you're out on the bay, you might even have a chance to go see manatees, right? Even in the beaches, I know they've been spotted out here. Their waters have to be higher than 68 degrees though. As well, we'll kind of get into a little bit more in a minute. Why? The time of year that they do migrate is usually during the winter months. They start to migrate in early or towards the end of November, and then they're going to start making their way back home in March, right? So this time of year, right? This is kind of why we're talking about manatee migration. You might see them if you're out boating and things like that, because they're making their way back. Now, if manatees do not migrate to warmer waters, they can get something called cold stress syndrome. This leads to a range of health problems. In some cases, it might result in death, right? This syndrome occurs when manatees are introduced to waters below 68 degrees and they live there for a long period of time, right? So longer than just a day. Unlike other marine mammals I mentioned, right? Marine mammals have an adaptation called blubber. Manatees don't have that. They really just have fat within them. They don't contain blubber because they don't go to colder depths in water. This syndrome can really affect their metabolism. It can slow it down, which means that they can get more diseases and they aren't going to eat as much. It can cause skin lesions. It can have lethargic behavior, meaning they're going to be more slow. They're going to probably not have a lot more ability to eat like they do. They're going to have rapid respiration, so they might have harder time breathing. And they might have barnacles or anything like that all over them. So it causes a slew of issues for them. So that's why they really are going to try and migrate, not just to find a mate, not just to find food, but they have got to find that warmer water. Now, when manatees do migrate to avoid this syndrome, they will migrate places with warmer waters like the springs. So there were a ton of springs out here in Florida that they might change to. So specifically in this area, they will migrate down to parts of South Florida, right? They're most likely to be found in springs like Crystal River or the Hamasi Springs. I believe it's Blue Springs State Park. They do daily manatee counts and they've reached up to 900 in a day before. That's pretty impressive for that amount of manatees out there. At this spring, it does offer a chance to go and swim near manatees, but guess what? You can only look but not touch manatees because manatees are protected under both federal and state law. This law is called the Marine Mammal Protection Act and the Endangered Species Act. So this means that you can look but don't touch, because if we start touching manatees, you can get fined or even jail time. It's very, very serious, right? So remember, if you're out during this time of year, right, you're out boating, it's getting warmer, we have chances to go out and kayak and paddleboard and swim and all those fun things. If you see a manatee out making its way back home, remember just to look and let it be. Don't touch it. You don't want to hurt it. You don't want it to get in trouble. And you also don't want to get in trouble, right? So do not also entice manatees to come over to you. Some people do run fresh water off their docks sometimes to clean their boats or other things like that and might leave it running. Well, that water does entice manatees. Manatees are very curious creatures, right? So they might come over and they might see what you're doing, and that can hurt them because a boat might come up to them and really injure them. If they're coming by, right, you may even hear them come up for a breath of air because they let out, just like other mammals, they have to breathe air. So they might come up and do right outside of the water. It's a really cool experience to be able to hear. Like I said, manatees will really start to migrate home and go freely through the different Florida springs, rivers, bays, lakes, and even the oceans, right? So you should really count yourself lucky if you do get to see these sea cows in their natural environment, because they are pretty elusive. And just always remember, if you're out there and you see a manatee, to look at it and don't touch.